And after 4 years, 43 rejections, and some craft classes and 17 drafts, I ended up with something that a couple of agents ended up saying yes to, and I got my book deal on that.
Well, hello and welcome back to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I'm excited to introduce you to my guest, Camille Di Maio. But before I do, I want to talk about the power of what if. Now, I think the most powerful question an author can ask is what if? And of course, they're asking that to themselves. And what we do with that phrase is what separates authors from everybody else. And other authors I've spoken with, like Nita Prose, for example, have said the same thing. Now, for Nita, this episode goes back a couple of years. She, of course, wrote a wonderful debut bestseller called The Maid. She walked in her hotel room and found her maid holding her sweaty running clothes, holding her, Nita's sweaty running clothes, not the maid's sweaty running clothes. That would be weird. And this sparked an idea. She wondered, she thought to herself, this maid now knows something about her, but she knows nothing about this person who's holding her dirty laundry. And on the way home, she started sketching out the prologue for her book. The Maid became a number one best-selling debut and launched Nita's career. She was a well-known editor at the time, and she made the transition from being an editor to an author. And I had a similar story, although with just a wee bit less success, I should say. It happened when I was on vacation in Cape Cod. I had just wrapped up the final edits for my third novel, which was called Winning Streak. And I thought I was just going to take a chunk of time off while that went back to my editors for a final review, and then eventually off to the publisher. I said to myself, I'm not going to do anything right now. I'm not going to start another writing project. Well, there's that phrase, man makes plans and God laughs, and, which is interesting because I wound up going to Sunday Mass in Chatham after finishing those final edits. I am a good Catholic boy. I'm a decent Catholic boy. I mean, I'm practicing, probably not that good. But anyway, I was there. I was at this mass in Chatham, Massachusetts, and I couldn't help but notice that the priest looked like he might keel over at any moment. I mean, he was not a young fella. And my mind started to wander. Now I know those of you who do the thing, go to church and stuff, are probably saying to yourself, you're not being reverent here, Mike. You're not focusing. Well, I wasn't, but I started to ask myself the what if question, and my mind went to a dark place. It's like, what if he was poisoned during the mass, and what if somebody had tampered with the wine that he was about to consecrate? And by the time I got back to our rental house, the story was already unraveling in my mind, and my wife lost me for the next 6 months while I drafted the second book in the Farragram series, The Last Homily, which I thought was actually, I think it deserved to do better, honestly, in the marketplace. But hey, look, I'm biased. But that really summarizes what the blessing and the curse of what if is. It can change your plans, it can hijack your time, it can consume your imagination, but it's also the lifeblood of creativity. And my guest today, Camille Di Maio, knows this better than anyone. Her own what if moment came when she started wondering about the untold backstory of the two characters in the Beatles song Eleanor Rigby. That spark eventually led her to a manuscript she would one day hand directly to Paul McCartney. You're going to hear that story firsthand from her. Amazing story. And from that moment, Camille really has built a career on writing best-selling works of historical fiction, and most recently, her latest novel, Come Fly With Me, which is great. It takes you really back in time to the days of Pan Am, which obviously doesn't exist anymore, but used to have if you know the MetLife building in New York City, that used to have a big old Pan Am logo on it. Really cool story. A great book, a great conversation with Camille Di Maio. So if I'm going to borrow something from Pan Am Airlines. This is your captain speaking. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Camille Di Maio. Camille Di Maio is the best-selling author of Until We Meet, The First Emma, The Beautiful Strangers, The Way of Beauty, Before the Rain Falls, and The Memory of Us. She joins me today on Uncorking a Story to talk about her writing career and latest book, Come Fly With Me. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Camille.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you, Camille. I'm curious, where does your story as an author begin?
I wanted to be a writer ever since I was 12 years old. I just experienced bullying on the playground, as many of us do. So I found a lot of refuge and solace in the school library, where I went through all the Nancy Drews and Trixie Beldens. And I think just about in my 8 years there, I think just about everything that they had. And I wanted to be one of those people who provided that escapism. And so authors were kind of heroes to me. So I wanted to be one of them someday.
Well, we share a few things in common, but the first I'll just talk about for a minute is bullying, because it's, grammar school and middle school, not my favorite time of life. How did bullying show up in your life?
I was just kind of the oddball out. We came from a pretty religious family, and I wasn't allowed to do a lot of the things that my friends were allowed to do, which kind of looking back, some of that makes sense. But I just didn't have any touch points of commonality with anybody. Kids will always pick on somebody who's different. I had Coke bottle glasses back in the day too, so that certainly didn't help with anything. Just any differences. Kids are kind of quick to point out. It's not always nice. And I found my quiet, and I found my people among books and authors.
I'm wondering, at this stage in life, can you look back on that time and view that bullying in any way? Could it have been a gift?
Absolutely. I think that the things that are most difficult are the things that strengthen us. It's kind of a resistance training for life. And so I wouldn't go back and change anything about the course of that. I don't know really what I would be today if it hadn't sparked that love of writing. I had the love of reading already. But of course, and I look back and it's an opportunity to forgive, and then to also try to teach your children to be, put something better forth into the world.
Yeah, I think it builds a little character. I mean, our bullying was, I was a heavier kid. I had a twin brother. We were both, on the heavier side, not necessarily what you call traditionally athletic. I was decent enough at sports, but always picked last in gym class, and
Yeah. I relate to that.
I can't imagine who came up with this idea of like the gym teacher, I think, should be the one picking out the teams, but no, we're going to put two captains together. We're going to let them pick the teams. And it is one of the most I just hated it. I hated that part. I hated gym class. And again,
yeah.
I wasn't even bad at sports. I just did not, I just didn't fit in that sort of traditional kind of way.
Yeah, there could be better ways. If your name is A through M, you're on this team, and something like that. It really was quite a popularity contest, as I recall.
Man, but that was tough. But now I look back. So I had the benefit of going to a school where, it was K through 6. And then, but we all went to the same schools, from grammar school through high school, pretty much. By senior year in high school, though, things had changed, dynamics had changed. And we were actually all pretty tight by the time we were getting ready to graduate. And I found that some of the more super popular kids were the ones who peaked early on and didn't really accomplish much later.
I have told that to my kids over and over. I said, there's a pretty good trajectory that those who peak in high school don't make it in the long run quite as successfully as those for whom that was not their era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So 12 years old, kind of hanging in the library, reading all the Nancy Drew books and such. When did you start writing? When did you first start putting pen to paper?
I wrote some short stories at age 12, and my mom was very encouraging of that, thought that they were, publishable, which I look back. I don't even think I have some of those anymore. They probably were not publishable at all. But I did get that kind of encouragement from her, which was really great. And then I just read, I think right now I'm on average of reading about 100 books a year. I was just a voracious reader. But I think I kind of, after, a career in political campaigning and a career in real estate, having 4 kids, I'm homeschooling those 4 kids. I kind of adopted a mentality that writing would be for someday, someday when the kids were older. And my husband and my mom were always encouraging me. I know you have this in you and you want to do it. And then one day I finally had the spark of an idea for a book that just wouldn't leave me. And I also had read the Twilight series. my kids wanted to read that, and I wasn't sure if they were old enough for it. They were preteens, so I decided to just screen it. And I read through all four books in 3 days. And in reading that, I learned about the author, that she had written that series while having three kids in swim team. And she wrote a lot of that during swim team practice. And so that gave me the courage and the sort of the green light to say, oh, I can write while I have kids at home. And so between that and the idea that I had for a book, I started taking it seriously. So 10 years, now in 10 years, I've got 8 books. So it worked.
Not only are you a voracious reader, but you're a voracious writer as well. That's
Apparently
a really
so.
good. How long did it take you to write that first one? What was that experience like, and what did you take from that first one to your second?
So I wrote the first draft of the first book in 6 weeks. And that's because I didn't know what I was doing at all. I just plowed through this story. My youngest was in diapers. I was drinking Dr. Pepper like a good Texas girl and staying up till 3 and 4, just getting this story out of my head. So I had a first draft in 6 weeks. And now I kind of look back and say, oh, that was kind of impressive, but it's because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't even know that you needed an agent. I knew nothing. And so I just got to the end of what, looking back, is not a very good first draft, and discovered that I needed to query agents. And so I started doing that, learned how to write a query letter, the whole process. I did know that I wanted to traditionally publish it. And after 4 years, 43 rejections, and some craft classes and 17 drafts, I ended up with something that and a couple of agents ended up saying yes to, and I got my book deal on that. So now I love to talk to aspiring authors and try to help them cut through that time frame and tell them things that I didn't know at the time. But it was really good. I think the things I learned from it that I brought into not only my next book, but all the rest of my books, is that I think two attributes of being an author are humility and perseverance. Perseverance kind of being the obvious one. You have to push through a whole lot of no's and just believe that you have something there. And humility being that you need to receive and accept and work on the critiques that you get back from it. At some point, it ends being it's not your art anymore. It's something that you want to have be a product, and you have to start looking at it in that way and have the humility to sit back from it and let it be that.
So in my professional life, I work in the area of product development. And I like to draw the parallels between, writing a book and bringing a product to market, because they are very similar. It all starts with fulfilling some kind of a need, the book that no one's read before, right? So it's like a unique story, and then you've got to package it the right way. You got to find the right cover. You got to get it into distribution. You have to do all the marketing. I mean, there's a lot of different parallels there. But I might even add one more word to that, because you mentioned perseverance, you mentioned humility. I'd add persistence as well, because to get a few agents saying yes, you probably had a ton of no's
Yes.
along the way, and you've got to really be persistent with hunting, not hunting them down, but willing to face that rejection again and again and again.
Yes, it is very hard. You really, really do need to believe in yourself and believe in your story, and then hear the critiques. Why is there the no? Sometimes the no is because the market is saturated. My first book was a World War II book. There was a good amount of saturation in the historical fiction market for that. So some agents, once I had done many, many more drafts and had a better product, there were still agents saying, I love it, but my list for World War II is full. So you have to accept just market conditions as well. I have a business background as well, so I do look at those kind of things. My editor always loved me. She's like, Camille, I could talk to you like a businesswoman and not just an author. So we'd have good conversations like that.
Yeah. Well, what can you share with us about Come Fly With Me?
So Come Fly With Me, here's the cover for it. I just love what my publisher did with the cover. Unlike my other books, which were often sparked by a place or a moment in time or even a real human being, Come Fly With Me was really much more organic about a lot of my loves. So I love aviation. I love like the Frank Sinatra jet set era. I love to travel. So this is something I had in my mind for a very long time that I wanted to develop. But we were in February 2020, we were on the island of Moorea outside of Tahiti. And I was sitting there and the prologue just sort of like downloaded in my brain. And I was so in the moment, I hadn't brought my phone or a pen or paper or anything. And so I borrowed a pen from somebody and I realized that I had a lychee liqueur bag with me. I had just bought this lychee liqueur and I wrote the whole prologue on this paper alcohol bag because the idea had come. And so once it did, that kind of started to give me direction. I knew I wanted it to be about Pan Am. I felt like that was just the most iconic airline to ever be in existence. I went through a rigorous vetting process with an organization of former Pan Am stewardesses, and they really took me through some paces to make sure that I was going to tell the story that that would honor their legacy. And as much as I didn't need their permission to go forward, I wanted their not only their endorsement, but their stories. And so I spent about 4 years interviewing Pan Am stewardesses, some from the early 1960s, and just gleaning the most incredible stories. They were the supermodels of the sky back in their day. And it was an era of travel that we just don't see anymore, where you dressed up and it was a big deal. So anybody who kind of, sits on the plane in their pajamas and gets the peanut bag thrown at them is going to appreciate that there was an era where it wasn't like that. And so that's what I wanted to illuminate.
I remember being a kid in the late 70s. And the first time I was ever on an airplane, my mother made my twin brother and I wear like sport coats on,
Oh, yeah.
on a flight. And we're not talking Pan Am. I mean, this was like Air Florida. The airline doesn't exist anymore. I guess Pan Am doesn't either.
She was hearkening back to a bygone era.
But they're really, I mean, and then my mother was a very proper person, but now, and I used to travel basically for a living, running focus groups all over the country. And what you would see, the behavior you see with people on airplanes is just, I mean, it's you shake your head at it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you mentioned people wearing pajamas. I mean, people wearing pajamas, taking their shoes off, putting their bare feet on the bulkhead.
Yeah.
It is, it's unrecognizable from like, even when I was a kid. What did you, learn anything that you shook your head at from any of these stewardesses or former stewardesses that you interviewed? Like any stories really surprise you?
Like of how it used to be. Yes, the thing that really surprised me the most was a lot of stuff that was food related. They were on airplanes that were no bigger than they are today, smaller, in fact. So their galley kitchens were absolutely no bigger than today. And yet they were doing eggs made to order, beef made to order, coming down the aisle with beef, just a roast on it and cutting roast. It was like fine dining. There were even elements of fine dining in coach, not even just first class. Or one little nugget that they gave me is that the water containers that they would pour water from were solid silver. So they said that even before pouring water into it, these containers were extremely heavy. Then you add water and then you have to go reach over 3 people to go pour water in this heavy thing as you're getting, maybe a little bit of turbulence. So just the whole thing surrounding food service and the delicacy of that was really astonishing to me. I think those were my favorite details because it is maybe one of the most radical differences from how we fly now.
One of the things you mentioned when the story came to you in February of 2020, outside of Tahiti, which the timing isn't lost on me, because if you were just a few weeks later, you may not have been getting home.
No, we were on a month-long cruise that left California on February 1st. So I like to say we left the world. We left the U.S. in one world and we arrived on the 28th and it was a completely different world. So that was quite a month. And yeah, any later and it wouldn't have happened.
But you mentioned like the first part of the story came to you in like a download. And I sometimes like to get a little woo-woo on this show because I know like my own creative process sometimes works that way, where a story will just come to me like not fully formed, but really close. Like, and I call it a download. Like my last book came to me in a download in the middle of the night and I couldn't stop writing it. Does that happen often to you? I mean, do you experience these downloads from the universe?
The only one that I've gotten that was like a full book download ended up being my first book. And I think that's maybe why I could write it in 6 weeks, because just the entire idea of what I was going to do with it just came to me in this fully fleshed arc. The rest of them have been more like moments, or more than anything, it's like a specific thing I learn in history that I want to go explore more. In the case of Come Fly With Me, it was really just, I had this conception that I wanted to write, this jet set era book, but it was the prologue that really downloaded it for me. I knew I wanted to set it in the Pacific. I've spent a lot of time in the Pacific, so it started to really gel in that moment. But the details and what became the characters and the storyline were much more my traditional way of writing. I start exploring, I find some, the nuggets. Probably one of the biggest plot nuggets in this that got this story sparked was discovering that women could not be married at this era and be stewardesses. And so the what if in my writer brain was, what if I had a stewardess who was married? She was escaping a troubled marriage, an abusive marriage. And so she joins Pan Am and is not only needing to hide the fact that she's married, but also try to basically hide from her husband. And so that sparked like her storyline, and it all kind of went from there.
Yeah, I know we don't want to tell too much about the story because we want to whet the appetite for our listeners. But anything else you can share with us about the story or her journey?
Yeah, her journey is really just discovering herself in an era too. She approaches Pan Am thinking she's running away from something, but discovers that she's really running towards something. And I really like writing the friendship of women in books. So my other main character came from a completely opposite lifestyle. She comes from this Park Avenue, very gilded cage kind of upbringing, and she's running away from that. She's really trying to discover who she is in that environment. So they come from these extremely different backgrounds, but both are about, ultimately trying to find something. And I love having friends of all sorts of diverse backgrounds. So I wanted to illuminate the friendship of women where we come together in our commonality and something really beautiful can form. So they're just navigating friendship and having a career in the 60s and traveling and all the things that came from, and they're navigating this together as friends. And then there's always romance in my books.
Well, you have to have a little romance.
Gotta have a little romance.
Life isn't worth living without a little romance. That's what
love makes the world go round.
That's right. That's right. Hey, did you watch as part of your research, or maybe you might not even remember it because I think it was just a blip, but there was a show maybe 15 years ago about the Pan Am stewardess?
Yeah, I think you're spot on that it was, I think it was 15 years ago. And I think it got canceled because there was a writer's strike after season 1 and it never really resurrected. I remembered writing that. It was not really the spark for my interest. I have always loved aviation, but I loved that show. And so all these years later, when I went to write it, I did go back and rewatch it for some research purposes. But interestingly, as I became very ensconced in the community of former Pan Am stewardesses, they were not such fans of the show. They felt like it really, the main thing being is, they had a stewardess dating a pilot and things like that. There were just so many inaccuracies from what they really lived, which is why they vetted me so hardcore to make sure that I was going to tell their authentic story, because they have been burned. So I loved it as a consumer, but I came to learn in the process how many liberties were taken and how they felt about it. So I was striving on this one to aim for accuracy, and I'm so grateful that so many of them have read it now and given it really high marks for accuracy. So I feel like when you read Come Fly With Me, you can really feel like you were getting the story of what they lived.
Yeah. I mean,
I care about that.
It's such a great title. Like, I'm immediately brought to that Frank Sinatra song.
Yeah.
which is on my Sunday morning cooking playlist.
Oh yeah. It's so good. Yeah. No, and we travel, we see a lot of locations, and then there's 12 locations in the book. I've been to 10 of them. So I was able to put a lot of, personal experiences in some of these locations too. So
what are the two that you haven't been to?
I've not been to Hong Kong or Mexico.
Really?
Yes, but there were so many stories from the ladies about Hong Kong. In fact, in the ladies I interviewed who were from the early 60s, I asked all of them, what was your favorite layover? And I was expecting like a Paris or something like that. They all universally said Hong Kong, and with the exception of one. And so I really had to explore why was Hong Kong the favorite. And there were so many stories to come out of it. So I needed to make sure that was a feature in the book.
I'm curious. What can you share one of the stories about why Hong Kong is a favorite?
Yeah, one being that you would get off the plane and there was a man there who would take your measurements, take you to his shop. You would choose fabrics, you'd choose a dress that you wanted. And over the course of about a month, you would hit Hong Kong on a layover about 3 different times. And so your second time coming, you would get a fitting, he would make tweaks. And your third time coming, you would pick up this dress or whatever outfit you had for so cheap. And so they had these most spectacular wardrobes because of going and getting these tailor-made dresses in Hong Kong. And jewelry as well. Jewelry is another big one in Hong Kong. So I have some scenes exploring that. Also, the landing in Hong Kong is called the baptism. The first time you do the landing, it's called the baptism because it is such a frightening landing. Like you literally can see people in their windows doing their laundry because of how close the landing was at the time. It's called the checkerboard landing. So I had to incorporate that when I found out about it too. Quite an experience, apparently.
Yeah, but you're bringing that realism, that authenticity into the
Yeah.
storytelling, which I think people
Yeah.
will certainly appreciate. And that's
I hope so. They have stories really worth honoring.
so I have to pivot away for a moment. I need to ask you about meeting or getting a copy of one of your books to Sir Paul McCartney.
Yes, so that was one of the best moments of my life. So that was what became The Memory of Us. This was the first book, the one that took the 6 weeks to write. And my idea had been the song Eleanor Rigby. I knew they were fictional characters in the song, but thought, what if Father Mackenzie and Eleanor knew each other and had a history? Because all we know in the song is that he buries her at the end. So all these what if questions started coming to my head. And that's the story I set out to tell. And about 4 years in, when I was at about the 17th draft of it, Paul McCartney came through my hometown of San Antonio to be the first artist of a new relatively small venue compared to him. It was a 1,700 person venue when he plays like arenas. And somebody got him to come and do this. And somebody who knows that I had worked on this for 4 years gifted me a front row seat. And so I brought a copy of the manuscript. I brought a sign that said I wrote a book about Eleanor Rigby. And he played the song. So Paul McCartney was playing the Eleanor Rigby song like 10 feet in front of me. And my dad, who's a mega Beatles guy, he even named my brother Paul after Paul McCartney, if that tells you anything, told me that Eleanor Rigby was never on his set list until this. So it was just, it was a moment. It was a God moment that he was doing this. So it was after that song that I held up the sign. And he came to the mic and basically invited me to give him a copy and come up. And I gave him a copy of the book. And he actually started reading it to the audience. And yeah, and then even at the end of the concert, he stopped and turned to me and thanked me for the book. So it was just awesome. It was awesome. And to do that with my dad, who's since passed away, my mom and another relative were there too. It was a great moment.
I don't know how you beat that moment.
You don't.
I don't.
You don't.
I guess you can't chase it, right? You can't even try and replicate that with someone else unless, I don't know, maybe you could track down Ringo and I don't know. Any inspiration?
Ringo and Paul. There's Ringo's great. I'm all for Ringo, but yeah, that was to do that with my dad, especially, was just, one of the best moments of my life. And it was not long after that I did end up getting an agent and so forth. In the long run, I will just say, if anybody tries to pick it up, the publisher, it's a longer story for here. They did make me change the names. So somebody would not pick it up and necessarily see Eleanor Rigby right away. But literally, that's all that changed from the story I told. So it's like, if you know, and you will see this is the story as I imagined it between Father Mackenzie and Eleanor.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I've often wondered that too. Like, but here's I think the author's superpower is following your curiosity to a point where you ask that question, right? Like, what was the true relationship between Father Mackenzie and Eleanor Rigby? Like, how many people think about that, but then how many people actually do something about it? And I think that's where authors really,
those crazy writers of us. My editor told me once that you have to be crazy to be a writer. It's such a tough industry. She said you have to be extra crazy to be a historical fiction writer, because we're not only trying to tell a story, we are doing copious research and so forth. But I'll tell you how new I was. I did not even realize that historical fiction was a genre when I set out to write this. I just figured, okay, the song came out in the 60s. I imagined them being a certain age. So I kind of went back and I said, okay, I think that they would have been, youthful in maybe like 1938. And I was like, okay, what's going on in England in 1938? Well, that was World War II. So it just sort of You just kind of like leapfrog from fact to fact and create your story. And it wasn't until afterwards that I realized, oh, historical fiction is a genre and I love it. So that's what I've gone on and done. But for all of those out there who think you need to go have an MFA or something to do this, I'm telling you, I was completely ignorant of the whole thing. And you can go from a standpoint of just passion and curiosity and make it.
Different ingredients. I guess we can add that to persistence and humility.
That's right. Passion and curiosity. That's right. That what if, the two most important words together, I think, in writing is what if.
Yeah.
Just run with your what if.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious. I always like to throw a couple pop culture questions at my guest, Camille. When you were growing up, what were some of your favorite things to watch on TV? Do you have like favorite shows or movies or anything like that?
On TV, gosh, we loved Family Ties and Life Goes On. I think I liked a lot of those family dramas, The Cosby Show. I think that we were really drawn to a lot of those. So those were my favorites. And then Frasier took me not only through my college years, but even into last night. Frasier is my go-to, and I just need to like turn the brain off. It's going to be a Frasier. I have watched it end to end, I don't know how many times.
I mean, Frasier is so funny, and I think it got a little overshadowed by the success of Seinfeld, which I believe Seinfeld was on before Frasier.
Yeah, and those still pop up, but Frasier, it is brilliant. And when they did the reboot at the current Frasier, I was very afraid because you just can't touch perfection. But I think for what it is, they have done a very good job too. So I'm like, new Frasier material keeps coming.
Yeah.
So I love it.
How about music? What'd you like listening to?
Depeche Mode. Depeche Mode was like my number one. So any of that British 80s, British invasion stuff, maybe it was sparked because I had loved the Beatles in the first place. But Depeche Mode is probably my all-time favorite, and anything of that ilk. One of my daughters is a concert photographer in Nashville, and in October 2023, she called me on a Tuesday and said, I'm shooting for Depeche Mode on Thursday, and you better believe I was on that flight. And I got to go to that concert and watch my daughter being the photographer for Depeche Mode. And so, like, second only to meeting Paul McCartney, that was my favorite concert experience.
That's so cool. Yeah. That's so cool. And then if you can go back in time and whisper some words of advice, let's think about that 12-year-old who was kind of hanging in the library reading the books. What would you whisper into your 12-year-old's ear if you could?
It sounds kind of trite or like something you'd put on a poster, but just believe in yourself, and I think because all of the other voices around were just putting me down in various ways, just that believe in yourself, believe in your dreams. I don't think that those are really trite statements. I think that they really are important statements for a reason. I think they can keep you going.
Believe in yourself. We get a little Ted Lasso there.
Yeah. We need more Ted Lasso.
I'm still looking for a show to replace Ted Lasso in my life. I know that they're talking about a fourth season, but I can't find anything that fits the bill. Everything I turn on, it's always so dark.
Yeah.
I just want something that's going to make me smile and like warm my heart a little bit.
Yeah, that's pretty irreplaceable. I'm not sure anything has really taken the throne from Ted Lasso in that department.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, Camille, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people learn more about you? Do you have a website? Are you active on any social media? Can you share some handles with us?
Yeah, my website is CamilleDiMaioAuthor.com, so everything's on there, but I'm most active on Instagram and TikTok. I really love Book Talk and encourage more writers to get on it because it is a very enthusiastic book crowd over there, and there's a lot of people are intimidated, but it is a really, really great platform. So find me on Instagram and TikTok and, DM me. I'm pretty good about responding.
Well, I know if you go to your Instagram, you will see a little interaction with you and Sir Paul McCartney.
Yes, I do have one of my pinned videos on both platforms is that one. And I'm on YouTube as well. I do a lot of book reviews on YouTube and book stuff. So all of those. But yeah, you could definitely see the Paul McCartney interaction on TikTok and Instagram. It was special.
Very cool. I will put links to all of your contact information as well as where to buy the book in our show notes. So those of you who are listening, just go to the show notes and you can see where to buy the book and how to get in touch with Camille. Camille, I would say thank you so much for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.